Welcome to Start Being Visible, the podcast dedicated to inspiring, motivating, and equipping you to step out of the shadows and into the limelight in your work life, whether that's in your career or your business. Now, on today's show, I am joined by a very, very special guest, and that is my LinkedIn coaching client, Melissa Rowe. Now, Melissa is an emotional well-being and self-care coach for women in their prime. She's also an author, a speaker, a lifelong learner. And get this, at 80 years old, Melissa is still showing up, still guiding women home to themselves, and still proving that visibility has no age limit. And we're going to get into all of that in this conversation. Now, Melissa's background has involved so many different things, including being a social worker and a coach. She's a mother, and she brings decades of lived experience, compassion, and wisdom to her work, supporting women who are navigating stress, burnout, self-doubt, and the challenge of putting themselves first after years of giving to everybody else. Now, this is a conversation I am so looking forward to having, because I'm sure Melissa can share so much wisdom with us. So without further ado, Melissa, welcome to Start Being Visible.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to start the process of being visible, stepping out of the invisible space.
I love that. I love that. And that's exactly where we're going to start, because I think we connected. I'm not sure how long we've been connected on LinkedIn, but I know you've been on my email newsletter list for at least this year, right? Maybe before. Do you remember how long we've been connected?
At least a couple of years.
Okay, wow. So it's been a while. So and then earlier this year you reached out to me, and in response to one of my newsletters, and you said something along the lines of, Mildred, I am ready to start being visible. And I was like, okay, wow, let's talk. And that's when you hit me with the bombshell that you turned 80 at the beginning of this year, and you feel like there's so much that you have to share and to say, and that visibility is the way forward for you. So let's start there. Tell me, what inspired you to reach out, and what inspired you to really start this journey to visibility at 80 years old?
I purchased your book, and both of them actually, and I was reading that, and I'm thinking, this is fantastic. This is a way of this is a way of stepping out of that hiding space into becoming more visible, and recognizing that I have a lot more to contribute to women and to the world, and also there's a lot more for me to learn as a lifelong learner. And so that's your email, your newsletter. I read them all the time, but never never replied or respond to any of them. But I was inspired by the book, Being Visible,
Start being
together
visible.
with,
Okay.
together with that's it. My thought is interrupted. Together with being a part of your newsletter and receiving newsletter on a weekly basis on Monday. Also, I was looking to see which social media I wanted to use when I get back, because I had um, tell myself that I have social media. I had social media phobia. So I shut myself off from all social media. And so I was also investigating which one, because there's so many of them to choose. Because I was a member of LinkedIn for a number of years that I had not used appropriately, I decided to explore LinkedIn. And lo and behold, a LinkedIn coach.
Wow, absolutely. Right place, right timing, and I think there's a few things that you said that I think are already kind of great lessons for someone who's listening to this and you're in business. So you said you were on my newsletter list maybe for about 2 years and you didn't respond to my email. So as someone, when you're on the other side and you're the person putting out the email, sometimes it's easy to get discouraged and think, oh, I'm putting this out there, I'm sending emails out, or I'm putting out posts and nobody's responding. But it's important to know that everyone operates in their own time. So the time just wasn't right for you until the time was right for you. And because I had stayed consistent, I had stayed on your radar. So when the time was ready, I was ready. You were ready for me, and I was there because I had stayed consistent. So I think that's really powerful, about the power of consistency as well from the other end of the fence. But so for you, you read this book. You're like, okay, I need to start being visible. Did you at any point think, what on earth do I need to be visible for at 80 years old? Some of my age mates are playing, retiring, doing gardening, just sitting, watching. I don't know what people do at 80. Some people do that. Some people are adventurous like you and they're still living life to the full. What made you decide that you weren't ready to hang up your boots just yet and sit in a corner for the rest of your life?
Because I spent a large part of my, like many other women like myself, I spent large parts of my life catering to the needs of others. Hence my profession, social work, life coach, health care provider. All of those is providing service to others. And so I took time out for myself. So about 4 or 5 years, I was off the radar, not only off on social media, but just out of the being out there because I was no longer working for someone. I had retired. So after retirement, I decided to take time for me. And so after that period of time, I was connected to the Women's Speakers Association and connected that way with women when I did the chapters in the two of their books. So after this year or last year, I decided I would not any longer pay to write someone else to write my story. So I decided to start writing my own story and not be a member of the association anymore because it was costing me money that I didn't funds that I didn't have. So this year was last year was the right time, or 2 years ago was the right time for me to say, okay, you've taken time off, you've taken care of yourself. Now it's time to get back out there. And so the question is, how do I get out there? Because there's so many different ways through social media, and I wasn't too fond of them. The most one that I was connected to and have lots of friends is Facebook. But I just wasn't convinced that Facebook was the one for me. And so that's when I started looking at LinkedIn, and together with the connection with your book and you as a coach on LinkedIn, that kind of helped to help me to make the decision.
Hmm. I love that. And I love, so we're kind of almost at the end of your time in terms of your career path. I want to take you back to the beginning though, because I want to know a little bit more about, because 8 years, 80 years, 8 decades, that's a lot of living that you've done. So I want to know a little bit more about what that journey looked like for you, starting kind of, what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? Because I know you live in, is it Canada you live in right now? But that wasn't always where you started. What was that journey like for you?
Oh, that's a long journey. Years. Um, I grew up. I'm a part of a large family. I had 11 siblings. My mother had 14 children. Um, Three died at birth, and so there was 11 of us, and we lived in a small village. And there's there's what is now called, but at that time I didn't know. It was like that's a poverty. It wasn't a very rich area. For me, it was very rich because it's a community surrounded by people with wisdom and relatives and all of that. But later on, I recognized that once I left the village, that there were this label of poverty in some instances when people talk about small villages in Jamaica or in the Caribbean. But
So
I'm the
was that in
seventh
Jamaica? Was that in Jamaica that you're talking about?
Jamaica, yeah. So
Okay.
I'm the seventh of 14 children. So there are older children, older siblings, and there's younger siblings. So at age 6, I started to take care of, as a girl in the village, if you had that, but you start, part of your role is basically to take care of younger siblings, especially when parents mother have to go someplace. So you take care of your younger siblings, but you also take care of the other kids in the neighborhood, because it's just it's a family.
Hmm.
So that's where my childhood started. And my dad is someone that when I write, I haven't taken the opportunity to speak about because there is this I think there is a block in my was a block in my space about him because he was a brilliant carpenter and builder, and he built many of the houses in the community, including churches and schools. But he was also an alcoholic, an abuser, and yeah. And so I would, as a child, I remember laying in bed and listening to my mother screaming from the abuse of my dad. And since I was the oldest of the younger kids, because the older kids had left, siblings had left and gone to find their own life, um, this I was the one who was hearing this because the younger ones would be asleep, or doing something else. So, and then later on, my mother was a very she was a community leader, and she was very active in the church, in the Moravian church, which is very popular in the Caribbean. She was a very quiet woman. Um, it's my word for that is basically the silence. Women were silent. They had no rights or no opportunity to speak because they became almost like things. Can't think of a
Mm.
better word
Objects.
but yeah, but women didn't really have much of rights because they become like they're owned by their
Yeah.
husbands. In,
Hmm.
in any event, later, my mother got really tired, and the community got tired of it, and they support her in leaving the community and leaving the abuse with four other children and myself. I was the older. I think by then I was about 16. And she went away and she stayed away for about a year. But the community helped her to leave in the middle of the night when he wasn't there.
Mm.
Uh, And so, can you just imagine uh, a country woman, a woman from a village, had no experience or anything like that, deciding to leave her children in order not to be abused? Just got
Oh,
tired.
I thought she took you with her, so she left the kids. And you just left yourself.
She just left. She left. So then I
Mm.
became the person who replaced her. And so while she was gone, I was the one who was responsible for everything, including my dad.
Mm.
And so at that time, the England was recruiting men from the Caribbean to start a new life. And so my dad was one of those who was selected to go. And so my mom had said to him she would not come back to the home unless he was no longer there. So that was an opportunity for him. And we
Mhm.
hope that it's been an opportunity for the family as well. But he basically abandoned his family when he went to England, and we just had very limited access or financial support. So at 18, when I decided to leave my village for the big city, Kingston, that was my first job.
Mhm. So at that point where your mum left and left you basically in charge, how did you feel at that time? And did any of the abuse that your mum experienced pass down to you in her absence?
Um, emotionally, but as a child in a village at that time, it's your duty to do whatever it is that your dad needs, right? Because you don't question your elder. No one that's older than you, you don't question. So for me, it was a normal state of affair that my mom is no longer there and I'm the oldest. So therefore, I take over and become the person who take care of everyone and everything.
Hmm.
So
And then,
it's not like I was thinking about had any form of thinking about what could I become or anything like that because who I am was that, if that makes sense.
yeah, were you angry at your mum?
Angry. There's not such a word exist at that time.
Mm.
It was later that I recognized the all these terms of poverty and fear and anger. But you know, women in those days, and especially children, you bury whatever it is emotion that was showing up. Because if you do show your emotions, then you were um, corporal punishment was was the discipline, right? So you don't
Hmm.
show your emotion because you don't want to be beaten for it or be disciplined for speaking up. Children
Hmm.
had no rights. They're at the mercy of their parents.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong, there was the word love as well was never verbalized, but it was demonstrated through action with the community and my mother and to a certain extent my father. So it wasn't all bad, but there was a lot of bad stuff for kids to experience. But we grew up in the church, so it
Hmm.
was church, school, community, and home. Very isolating experience, upbringing as well.
Mm. So at 80, where you are now, do you feel like you've fully processed all those different experiences and emotions? Because for a long time you weren't allowed to have emotions towards these things, as you said, and it was all suppressed. Do you feel like you've fully processed everything now and made some kind of sense of those early years of your life?
Absolutely. Um, Also, the journey that I took after leaving my village of safety and security and being exposed to the outside world, so to speak, which started in Kingston. And then later on, I decided too that I needed more. So in terms of career, then I moved. I traveled to Ottawa, Canada. And so, because of the nature of the work that I choose to do as a social worker and working in my community, specifically working with women, That did help as part of my growth process and my learning and how to deal with those emotions. As a social worker, if you're working with other people, not just women in that sense, but with other people. So therefore, you have to be able to deal with your own emotions in order to be able to support others in dealing with their emotions. So I did a lot of self care. I use a lot of I did a lot of self development, to basically learning about who I am or who I was as a person. And so that supported me in my growth. But at the same time, those that emotional upbringing had a huge impact on my life as a teenager and in my early adult life, in the sense that it affected my relationship or lack thereof with men, because it was connected, linked to my dad. And so I needed to deal with those emotions as they related to the men who I met. Um, so that had a huge
Mhm.
impact. But because of the work that I chose to do, the self work, the self development with myself, the recognition of to begin to love myself so I can be loved by others. And that really played a strong role in my journey, because I was meeting other women who had the same similar experience growing up and also still occurring in their lives as adults. So some of the stages that I look
Mhm.
at when I see women is age 6, age 12, and adulthood. Those are key areas there are key areas in my life, and there are key areas in some other women's lives. So sharing those experiences while supporting them really helped me in my own growth process as I supported them in their self development process.
Mhm. How did you end up in Canada?
How did I end up in Canada? I decided that when I decided I no longer wanted to be in this small village for the rest of my life, taking care of other people, I decided, as I said, to move to the big capital city, which I figured would be much better than what I had in the village. And so while I was there, I was working as a housekeeper for a family, and then there was advertising for domestic servants from the Caribbean and from Jamaica in particular to go to Canada to work with families. And so I decided, okay, this is the next journey for me. And so went through the process, got on the plane, landed in Ottawa. Oh boy, that's another journey. Very
Mhm.
cold, different climate. It's just like, just imagine packing up and leaving everything that you know for the unknown. Part of that is the determination, because I was wanted to take care of, to learn about myself, but I also wanted to be able to take care of my mother financially and the younger children, because my mother were not doing that. So even though I left the village, I was still providing care to my mother and younger siblings, because the older siblings were taking care of their own families that they had.
Mm.
So
And you
I was
were, how old were you at the time when you moved to Canada?
26.
Okay. Okay. So, and at this point, it was your dad still in England.
hmm We assume he was, because he wasn't communicating. He
Okay.
basically abandoned the family and wasn't communicating.
So you didn't hear from him again after he went to England.
he wrote a couple of letters and sent a little bit of money, I guess, the first year. And then after that, he basically just vanished, or we vanished from his life. We assumed that he had another family because he was a womanizer as well. So he had several women even when he was married in Jamaica. So um,
Mhm.
yeah, he just kind of vanished.
And you've already said that. So what you experienced with your dad affected your relationship with men as well. So I know you ended up getting married. At what age was that, and how did you get to that place where you were able to make that commitment despite not having the best example of marriage?
Well, there's a thing called love. When that shows up, there's no questioning, you know. So I fell in love and got married and had children, and how that occurred is another podcast. But I have to say it occurred when at the right time, because I had started doing my own work. But I married outside of my culture. I married a white Canadian.
Mhm.
That itself had its own challenges, because at the time in the 70s there were not too many um, mixed marriages,
Mhm.
and so that too is another story. The challenges of living in his world and losing myself.
Mhm.
So part of that work that I had done was kind of affected by the choices that I made by I was made by love. Um, and then we decided as a family to travel to Africa and work I work as a volunteer. My ex was responsible for an international program where you recruit volunteers and they go overseas and get people just coming out of university and looking for experience. So that was one way of doing that. So we spent 4 years in Africa while he did his work, and I do my work with the children and volunteer and all of that. So in that process, I had to learn again to take care of me, because there were so many other people that I needed to take care of. There was him, and then there was my children, and then there was the volunteers that he was responsible for that needed care because they had left home and needed a safe place to be, so to speak. So there again, it's another stage of providing care to others, which my um, affected me, and how that impact my life, and how yeah, and that too is another story. But it is
Don't
so
worry, we got time for all these stories. I want to hear them. So, because there a lot of women can relate to that whole, as women we tend to be, more the natural caregiving kind of side. We, as you said, we give to our, whether it's our husbands, our children, the community, etc. So that you're constantly giving out. So you learn. How did you learn, by the way, just to go back a bit? So how did you even learn the concept of self-care, and you know that being a thing? Because again, a lot of women don't learn this or practice this, to much later in life, if at all. They just constantly spend life just sort of taking care of everybody else, and get
yeah.
feeling right down in the process. So what triggered that for you, that pathway and that learning?
So as I've stated before, excuse me, Part of my self-development process included a lot of reading. So I have some really good favorite authors like Ian Van Zandt, and lots of reading of Black authors. A lot of them American, but some of them British, and some from the Caribbean. But I did a lot of reading, and I also joined a lot of groups locally, and I joined was part of an organization called the International Black Summit, which was based in the United States. It was mostly a spiritual group, not religious, but more spiritual. And we would travel every year for a weekend to some other countries to do this facilitation of work with people of African descent. So there was a lot of learning in that space in terms of looking at who you are, why are you here, what is your where do you see yourself from within a certain period of time, the next year, whatever. How do you take care of your family and your community, all of that supported. And working with other women and friends, because when I arrived in Ottawa, I didn't have any family, I didn't know anyone. So over the period of time, I used my friends to substitute as family. So there was groups of people who I could rely on and for support, and also give support to them as well. So I learned through different processes, through reading, so going to workshops, so having communication, and so that, and as a social worker, working with other community members, I had to learn these skills in order to be able to provide support to other people and other women.
Mhm. So when did you then shift from social work to coaching, and why?
Social work, and if you do that as part of a can be very rewarding, but it can also be draining, because clients expect certain things from, it's kind of like their doctor. They have certain expectations, and so trying to keep up with that and maintain your own sanity can be very challenging. So at a certain time, in between the okay, so I decided at a certain stage that I would go back to school, because we were so many children in the village and we didn't have a lot of financial support. We went to a level of elementary education, but we're not able to go to high school. So for me, I decided that I need to educate myself and get to the highest level that I could. So that's when I went into social work, and I went to university, and I was the first one in my family to go to university, and got my um, there's a 4 year undergrad program for social work. It took me 13 years to complete my undergrad,
Wow.
because you ask why.
Of course.
uh, I was a mother, I was a wife, and I was a worker. And at the same time, I decided that the one thing I would do for me is to upgrade my education. So I would take a half a course, sometimes for the year, or sometimes one course. But that's why it took me that long, because that is the one thing I was doing for me that no one could take away, or it will benefit people in the long run, but this was mine. So I did my undergrad after 13 years, and so that's why I'm very proud of that graduate picture behind me that
Mhm.
my son had painted, but had an artist painted, because the graduation day was such a celebration and such a, what is the language that I'm thinking about? It's such a very powerful and wonderful day because of that achievement, you know,
Mhm.
and and marching with all these other people who, had other different lives, but mine was kind of like at an impasse that I had achieved that. And never mind the period, the time it took me, I got it.
Mhm.
And and so after that, I decided, okay, I will go for the masters. And so I took a year from work. I was working in a community health center as a healthcare provider. I took a year off and did my master's because it was a year. So I had my master's of social work. And after that, I decided that it was time to shift from social work to something else. And I learned about life coach, and I did that by online, and recognized that, oh boy, this is so different from
Mm.
the dependency of clients on you as a social worker, as opposed to the partnership that could be formed with clients as a coach, because of that co-creative component. I am being the accountability partner for people who have issues, but they don't expect me to, or I didn't come from the space of, okay, I'm going to solve it for you, which is what was required in the social work space. In the
Mhm.
in the in the coaching space, I had a totally different way of addressing and supporting people around looking at their own issues, and arriving at their own solutions. That I don't have the solution you do, but I will support you in arriving.
Mm. So it seems like a natural fit for you and your personality and your evolution from where you started.
Yes, absolutely. And I loved
Mhm.
it. I still love it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can space yourself. Yeah.
And you're still doing it. So here you are, 80 years young, and you're still coaching and you're still speaking, you're still learning. Like, and basically shattering stereotypes that maybe some people might have about what people should be doing or what people are doing in their 80s. So I know from working with you that you're very driven, like ambitious, like all that kind of stuff, and full of fire. So what is it that motivates you to keep on going?
Okay, I think another component of my life is my writing, and through the process, as well as of being a lifelong learner and wanting to learn more, and loving books and loving reading, I learned to write, and so through that writing, another part of my growth evolved. So when I look at writing and coaching, there's a connection between those two. So the next stage for me from coaching is writing. And so the writing really keeps me motivated and inspired. And one of the ways that I do that is, I have a I do what is called, I call a morning page, which is basically 5 pages of longhand writing. Every morning, I just clear my head and clear all the whatever it is that's in my head before I start my day, and that keeps me in that space of writing. And so you write 5 pages and then you stop, and you put them somewhere. You don't edit. You don't, you just. So I have this massive amount of morning pages that I so lots of content that I started doing in 2010, and so that's my other motivation. And I would like to be. I know that there is and you know this as well as working with women, that there are a lot of women who have powerful stories that they've lived as part of their lives. And like me, we are they're unable or unwilling to share those stories in whatever form. And part of that also is that they're not aware or they're choosing just not to. But I would like to be the catalyst for sharing my story so that women would, when they read my story, they can see themselves in somehow their experience in mine and be able to share their stories as well, because those stories should be shared with the world. I believe that we have wisdom and experiences and story at 80 and plus that the younger generation can benefit from. And so if I can play a role in supporting women in sharing their stories in whatever form they choose, I look forward to that.
Mhm. And that really takes us nicely back to visibility, as we kind of start to wrap up. And that's the thing. And that's part of when we did have that conversation. And I just learned so much about you with that initial conversation before we started working together. It's like there is so much wisdom that you can add and share for the younger generation and for people ahead of you as well. So I know we're still at the beginning stages of your visibility journey, but so far, what has been the most surprising or empowering part of this whole LinkedIn visibility for you?
Hmm. To be quite honest, I think the the greatest learning through this has been my ability to trust my coach. And she is such an inspiring and motivating person, and she's also very giving. And so the connection between her and I, once we had our conversation, Zoom conference, that having our Zoom conversations, just had me wanting to look forward to the next time and look forward to those emails. So I think it's the inspiration and motivation that I get from my coach that says, if you want to be visible, you have to put yourself out there. And here I am. I mean, this is phenomenal. 5 years ago, I would not, absolutely not, be doing this. So, but starting to do this helps me with this when I was doing the as a member of the Women Speakers Association, and I did my chapter in the book. I also had this kind of so that was probably kind of my first experience of being interviewed and being visibly seen, because I was terrified of being seen and also of speaking and people gonna hear me, people gonna see me, like, look at me now. There's no fear here. It's it's so, but I'm really very appreciative and really value and very thankful for for you as my coach
Thank you
and the
so much.
learning and the
And
learning
that, yeah,
continues.
that is wonderful. No, thank you so much. And it is amazing working with you as a client for sure. So, and I guess I really want you to share some parting words of wisdom to the ladies that are listening here. So, if you can kind of go back to like your younger self, maybe let's say Melissa in her 30s or 40s, what would you tell her about visibility and self-care? Or maybe you can pick a different decade of your life, maybe where you needed this message the most. Where would you go back to, and what would be the message you would share with that younger version of yourself?
Hmm. I would say don't let anyone tell you that you're not enough. You are enough as you are.
Mm.
Yeah. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do that. There's anything you cannot do. The sky's the limit. Once you put your mind to it, it's not about how old you are. It's about how you feel. Age for me is a state of mind. My brain still functions. The body shuts down here and there in different places, but that mind is still strong. So as women, we have a tendency to listen to the negatives that shows up in the world. And so my advice is listen to that silent voice from within and do what it says.
Mm. That is powerful. That is really, really powerful, and such a great way to end this conversation, Melissa. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, the inspiration. And of course, the people listening to this are gonna want to get hold of you. Where can we send them? Is it LinkedIn?
Yes, send them to LinkedIn.
Okay, fantastic. And that's Melissa. We'll put all the notes and all the contacts in the show notes, but that's just at Melissa Rowe, Rowe. You can find Melissa. And yes, please, if do plug into the work that she's doing, coaching women, in all different areas. Just take a minute just to tell us what areas, Melissa, that you provide coaching for women, in case somebody's listening and they need those services right now.
Okay. Fear that we have so much in our lives and that's occurring in the world right now, and so we're afraid. And sometimes we're not even sure of what we're afraid of. And for some of us, the fear itself is a fear. It used to be for me as well. I have a program that is called Anger Solutions that basically works with women from the space of emotion. We're taught that anger is a behavior, but anger is an emotion, like any other emotion, like sadness and happiness and all of those emotions. So I have a program that I offer on that can be done one on one or through groups. Also, self doubt, which I have suffered from a lot, experienced myself a lot because of this story I tell myself about not being wanting to be part of the social media is part of the self doubt that you can't do it. I do that, and also stress management and self esteem, which looking at our confidence in ourselves and our ability to do what we need to do on a regular basis for ourselves. And for me, the number one is learning about how to love ourselves. We spend a lot of time loving other people and looking for love outside of ourselves. But we have the love within us. So I support women as well in learning how to love themselves.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Those are all absolutely powerful and vital areas. So Thank you for the service that you do. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for being on this podcast, Melissa. It's been a great pleasure having you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure for me as well. I mean, I think you rock.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next time for the next episode of Start Being Visible. Take care.